Hello there guys and girls! Welcome to another tutorial about making machinima in GTA 5. I can't promise that this video will be as funny as the others, because I made so many jokes and I'm slowly running out of gags, just like this poor young lady. Please donate money to help her out in. Okay, so for this tutorial we will be using Menyoo PC. More specifically, its task sequences. This is a pretty unknown feature with a lot of potential for your cinematics because it can do what Scene Director was aiming to do once, before its development came to a halt. Task sequences let you control multiple characters in single player mode and thereby create complex scenes in GTA 5. While I've talked about this topic here and there in my other tutorials and quick tips, there is no comprehensive guide on the topic anywhere on YouTube. I mean, I didn't check and I don't care. Today I'm gonna change that. I will start with the basics again and then we will work our way to the more advanced stuff. To keep this tutorial a little shorter, I will make a follow-up piece about all of this where I will show all the theory from this video in a more practical setting. Potentially there will also be a Q&A stream where I will try to answer all of your questions regarding task sequences. I learned most of the things I've shown you in this tutorial during the production of my short movie Red Roses. Please check that out to see many different task sequences in action. If you have any questions, corrections or additions for this tutorial, please share your input with the community in the comments section to help others out. I'd appreciate your input. You can skip any chapter by using the timestamps in the timeline of this video. However, I suggest to watch it all in order, because I actually put some thought into the structure of this video. Grab a drink and let's get started. The basics. First of all, let me explain what task sequences are and how they work. As the name suggests, you can plan a sequence of different tasks for characters and also objects. Menyoo basically just goes through this list from top to bottom like a program within GTA 5, and then it will restart from the top in an endless loop. Some tasks have a customizable duration and can sometimes even work in parallel with the setting keep running after allocated time. I will get to that again later. What's great about task sequences is that they give you a pretty controllable setup for your movie scenes, which makes it easier to plan all the action. The biggest selling point, however, is that you can easily save your progress within a menu map. So in case your game crashes or you want to continue working on a scene later, you can just load up your map via Object Spooner, manage saved files, load placements. A downside of task sequences is that they can take a lot of time to get right, especially when you're new to the concept. So the question is, when is it smart to use task sequences? Here are some situations where they come in handy. 1. Multiple characters doing stuff on screen. This means long shots where more than one actor does more than one thing. If you have shots where only one character is visible, you can as well just play animations the regular way or shoot at an enemy like you would do during normal gameplay. 2. A single character does many things. Sometimes you want to play multiple animations in quick succession, and even if you were fast enough to navigate through Menyoo while controlling a character, it is hard to time that stuff right. 3. Continuous shots where timing is important. If you are planning to film a scene with little to no cuts in between, task sequences are your best friend, because you can time almost everything precisely. So for simple shots of a single character walking down the street, or one actor playing just one animation, you'd be quicker by just walking the character yourself, or applying the animation the normal way, being player options, animations. Earlier I said that task sequences are a pretty unknown feature. That is because they are not accessible through the main menu of Menyoo PC or the player options I just mentioned. Instead, you need to select or spawn any character or object and put them in your database first. Then you can enter their properties to create a task sequence. You will notice that objects don't have as many available tasks as characters, because obviously they can't walk around or drive a car. Or can they?
Come on, I don't have time for this shit!
However, there are some tasks you would typically apply to objects rather than pads, and vice versa. Let's move on so I can show you what I mean. And just so you know, I will be working in Menyoo's spooner mode a lot, which you activate by pressing F9 to see these crosshairs. Tasks for objects. In this chapter I will go through this list of tasks specific to vehicles and objects and briefly tell you what they do and how they work, but not in order. If I leave one out, that is because I will talk about it later. So, set health does basically nothing for a car or an object, at least during my tests. I've never needed this, just like add blip and remove blip, because this just puts a dot on the minimap for a particular object and removes it, respectively. This has very little practical use for machinima, except maybe if you have a car that is moving and you want to time a collision with your car by looking at the minimap. I did that in Red Roses, but the blips were already provided by the actors I saved in Scene Director. Empty vehicle could be useful for machinima if you want multiple characters to exit a vehicle at the same time. However, there is a better method for this which gives you more control. More on that later. The same goes for achieve vehicle speed, which is really only useful for driving in a straight line or if you want to drive slowly on PC without a controller. But even then, Menyoo has a cruise control feature for that in the vehicle options, which maintains the speed and lets you focus on steering. Achieve velocity is a very useful method, since it allows you to move inanimate objects on their own. You can do this by tinkering with these values, while magnitude means speed for some reason. Magnifico! The object has to be dynamic so it can move. In the task itself, you'll notice a relative tick box. No, this has nothing to do with Alabama. It just means that the velocity will be applied relative to the object, which can lead to some interesting results. Most of the time, however, you want to deactivate this and the difference is apparent. Another important thing to understand here is that the object still seems to be slightly affected by gravity. This means that if you want it to travel in a horizontal fashion, you need to adjust the pitch too. As a rule of thumb, the higher the magnitude value is, the lower the pitch value can be. It is also possible to manipulate the pitch value while the task is active and while you are recording. The same goes for the direction, which is a lot of fun to play around with. And you can even shoot at the moving object and thereby manipulate it. But for this to work, the object must not be invincible. As you can see here, I'm sneakily using two other tasks here. Teleport to position is another essential method. This will perfectly position any object or character back to a position that you define by aiming your camera and adjusting the values for X, Y, and Z. Watch out though, the object is always placed at that position with its center, so it is wise to activate the task sequence and adjust the position live. Then you can deactivate the sequence again. By putting this at the end or start of a task sequence, you can create a perfect loop in a controlled environment. Otherwise, this object would just travel forever and I'd have to follow it with the camera. Snap to rotation makes sure that after the teleporting, the object's orientation will be reset. For this, the relative box needs to be deactivated so that the values are global. This task also has another purpose though. When you take an object like this hatchet, you can make it spin around any of its own axes. Is that even a word? In this case, you activate the relative option and start the task sequence before you make any changes. If you change the values like this, the object will start spinning right away. If you want to know how to create a kill cam with this, you can watch my quick tip video about that specific use case. So we've already learned the first big lesson. Task sequences always loop indefinitely until you stop them manually. But luckily, there's also a task for this. End sequence breaks the loop for you. And why is this useful? Well, if you want an object to be launched rather than traveling in a straight line, this task will make a huge difference. Just set the duration of the achieve velocity task to 0.5 or even 0.0 seconds and a high magnitude. Now the object will only get a short push and the in-game physics will do the rest. Alternatively, you could use the task achieve push force for that. It basically does the same thing but lacks control over the duration, just like men during sex. The two tasks oscillate to point and oscillate to entity are very similar, but there is a cool difference between them which I'll show you. With the first one you gotta define a point to where the dynamic object should be floating. Set it to the camera target in spooner mode and once again adjust it manually like I've shown you with the teleport task earlier. Let's activate the sequence. You can now see how the object is floating near the point. If you set the damping ratio to 0, the object will keep wiggling in place indefinitely. Otherwise, it will become stationary soon enough. If you go below 0, shit goes nuts. So don't do that. The angular frequency is just how fast the object wiggles. You could use this effect in a horror movie with paranormal activity, like floating knives or whatever. Admittedly though, it is pretty tricky to find the sweet spot here, because the objects are affected by some weird physics. With oscillate to entity, instead of defining a camera point, you can choose a character or another object, and even define the offset, so the object won't float below the actor but behind or in front or above. And if you walk the character around, the object will follow in a dynamic way. The bottle will never let go of you, Michael. Here's a creative example of how to use this. If you use this task on a lamp and set its opacity very low, meaning 1, and deactivate collision, you can then duplicate that invisible lamp many times to get these crazy fairy tale lights floating around. Right now they are all clumped together because the offset values are all the same. The real effect comes to shine once all the offsets are individual, like you can see just now in this fast forward. It took a while, but it was worth it. Isn't that awesome? I haven't gotten around to using this idea in one of my videos, so if you use this idea, please be so kind and point your viewers towards this tutorial so they can recreate the effect for themselves. Next one, freeze in place. This task will let you change an object from dynamic to frozen and vice versa. However, I've never personally needed this task. But going back to the impulse here, you could stop the object from rolling with this. But you also have to unfreeze the object at the start of the task sequence, because otherwise it won't move at the first task. Change opacity does what it says it does. Changing the opacity of an object, making it invisible. For objects, this is interesting because you can make them disappear without making a cut. This could be used for a shot of a car vanishing behind a truck in some kind of spy movie. And naturally, you can turn it back to 100% as well with another task. Do you notice anything? There is practically no delay in between any of these tasks, which means it loops like this. To add a delay between any two tasks, you place a nothing task and set the desired duration in seconds. This way, you can put a 1-second delay between each step, making the car vanish and reappear over and over. Why, you ask? Because you can. Last but not least, TriggerFX is one of the tasks where the magic happens, giving you another huge submenu of options to choose from. Be warned! If you want to preview these effects in a task sequence, your game may slow down a lot because of the infinite loop. To avoid too many effects layering over each other, it's best to check play only once and add a 5-second nothing task at the end. Now you can activate the sequence and see what kind of effects there are. I won't discuss all of them, feel free to discover them on your own. Among my favorites are mop drips, because you can build a makeshift shower from it by having many objects with this task at the same time. Of course, in this case you'd make the objects invisible. Blood impact is useful for some extra gore that also lands on the floor. Well, regular floor, not my fake tutorial stage floor here. The petrol fire is great for car accident scenes or building fires. It looks best at night, by the way, as it emits a blue shimmer. The flame is also cool, eh? And of course the different types of explosions, which are very useful for action scenes. By the way, you can of course also combine multiple trigger effects on the same object. In this example I created what looks like an underground explosion emerging on the surface. While you can also access these effects outside of a task sequence, you will have one powerful extra option here. You can alter the position, size and direction of the effect. I've used this a lot in the past to position the effect meth pipe smoke at the tip of a cigar or cigarette, otherwise the smoke would emit from the middle of the object and also be way too big. Now let us move on to the next chapter to discuss specific tasks for objects made of flesh and blood, also called subjects or people. Tasks for characters. Now let's get to the tasks that are specific to characters, which is quite a lot to unpack. As you can see, the list has gotten a lot bigger. Like me when I look at you. I'm not gonna go through the list in order, instead I will show you the most important one first. Play animation is likely gonna be your most used task. When you enter this submenu, it will look pretty familiar like when you apply an animation to characters. So there are different animation flags for upper body, secondary task and so on. If you want to learn more about that, please watch my Menyoo tutorial for more basics. You can search for animations normally here or go all the way down to the bottom to quickly access your favorites. The big difference here is that you can set a duration for the animations and thereby chain multiple animations together. This is especially useful for animes that have 3 parts called enter, idle or base, and exit. In this case you would add 3 tasks and add these parts in order. With the default duration of 10 seconds it won't work. So you gotta tweak those numbers until there is a smooth transition to the next task. The enter animation needs to be a little shorter here. The idle base animations can be as long as you need because they loop perfectly anytime. And the exit anim is way too long here, so it starts over all the time. It seems 2 seconds are a little too short and 2.5 are a little too long. Menyoo will only allow 0.5 increments, but what you can do here is to save the Menyoo map and edit the duration in the XML file, which you can open with Notepad++. Just find the right character and the right tasks to change the duration values as needed. It is once again fidgety, but it works. In the end, it could look kinda like this.
And action! Keep crouching, and get back up. Awesome, Michael.
In the past, I've taught you how to combine animations for upper and lower body. The same is possible here, thanks to the setting Keep Task Running After Allocated Time. This unwieldy name just means that the task will keep running after the set time ends, allowing for parallel tasks. So let's just add play animation twice here. The first one will be a base animation set to loop. The duration can be set to 1 second because it will keep running anyway. The next task will be set to upper body secondary task loop. I'm just gonna pick one from my favorites. Starting the sequence will reveal the magic here. Combine this with a different mood in the pad options to get a unique setting for your scene. If you notice that there is a small skip after these 10 or what seconds and you just want this character to loop his shit for a long time, you can always set the duration to 999 by hitting enter on the keyboard and typing the number in there. But you can also chain several upper body animations together that way, which might look a little wonky during the transitions, admittedly. That always depends on the individual anims. And then you can go to pad options and give the character some speech that suits the movements.
My name is Trevor.
As you saw right now, I did the speech event outside of the task sequences. You might be wondering why, because there is a task called Play Speech. Let me explain. The problem is that the task sequence is going through the list step by step, which means that the speech event will start after the first animation is done playing, when in reality I want both to happen at the same time.
Oh my.
This is why the task Play Speech is more useful in combination with just one loopable animation set to keep running. You have to be aware though that most of the speech events have multiple variants of different lengths, which might screw up your planned timing for lip syncing later on. Also, since the speech event itself does not have a duration timer, you should place a nothing task afterwards. While we're at it, why is there another similar task called Pause? Well, there is an actual difference there. If I add the task at the end, you can see nothing means that nothing happens. Who would have thought? But Pause actually interrupts the current animation and lets the character stand there for X amount of time before it continues.
Ooh, if you say so, if you say so.
Keep looking at entity is another one of the most important tasks, especially if you're filming close-ups and dialogue scenes.
Oh, you're a sweet girl, ain't ya?
In many beginner machinima, including my own old videos, you'll see how characters are supposed to talk to each other, but they are just staring off into the distance instead of looking at each other. Thanks to this task, characters won't only turn their head towards the target you selected, but also their eyeballs. The setting Keep Running is important here, because it lets you set this task to 0.5 seconds and then play an animation right after, effectively combining both tasks. For conversations with more than 2 characters, you could chain together multiple of these tasks to make the character look at both other actors. You can not only make pads look at other pads, but also other objects that are inside your Menyoo database. It gets really interesting if the selected entity moves around, because then the character will automatically turn its head accordingly. The same applies if the character is walking by a static object. The task Keep Looking at Position has basically the same function, only that you don't need to spawn any object and thereby the character's focus will remain static. Speaking of static, you're gonna wanna have actors that move around a little. If you wanna make pads go somewhere, there is a simple task called Go to Position. But you don't really need that, because there is a more powerful variant of that task. Follow route allows you to set more than one waypoint to go to. All you gotta do is determine if the character should run or walk, and then set different waypoints by pointing at them in spooner mode and hitting this button. Once you start the task, the actor will start walking. If the duration is set longer than the time it takes to reach the last checkpoint, the character will just wait it out and restart the task sequence afterwards. If you don't want the actor to stop, try to find the correct timing. By the way, if you change the movement style of the pad, this will be automatically used for the task as well. You can give your actors more variety if they walk differently than the default multiplayer models. How about a drunk walk to show a character tumbling through the desert? Watch out though, as a slower walking speed will naturally mess with the timing of the task. There is one caveat to both go to position and follow route. They can't always handle vertical elevation very well, like with this stair set. If you point every little waypoint like I did with Michael here, it works nicely. But the AI is not smart enough to find its own way up if you set only one waypoint. Another fun task for Machinima is Follow Entity, because it lets you create big groups that follow your lead. This can be a time saver because you don't have to create multiple routes to follow for each individual. All you gotta do is tell them which entity to follow, ideally your own character, but you can also make them follow each other, so that Trevor doesn't go after Franklin, but after Michael, who follows Franklin. Got it? Pro tip: if you are not going to save your character within the menu map, select Self here. This means that when you reload the map later, playing as a different character, the task will still work correctly. If you make your own character invisible, it will look like they walk around autonomously without you as the leader of the group.
Back off!
The next task, Flee from Position, is another one of those self-explanatory walking tasks. Here is a representation of what it looks like. Instead, let's talk about snap to rotation again, but this time for pads. So let's say you have a character that plays an animation during which it changes its own rotation. That way, teleport to position alone does not work, as the pad won't arrive at the planned destination anymore. Just add snap to rotation right before the teleport and remove the relative tick mark. Placing the pink sphere like this will always reset the character to the correct orientation, just like we did with the objects before. As you can see, teleport and snap to rotation is a powerful task combo that you will use a lot. Face direction and face entity are basically the on-screen slow equivalents to snap to rotation, because the character will turn around using a default animation instead of zapping into place. You can define the direction, alternatively the entity to face, as well as the duration of the character turning around. It won't look spectacular on camera, but I can see this being useful in some situations. Let's jump back all the way to the top to set health. While it isn't all that useful, it can be fun. By setting your character to be invincible and then changing the task to the value 99, you can make any pad ragdoll instantly but without killing them. To make this loop, you can add another set health and leave it at 500. Then you add refresh, snap and stand, and sprinkle in a few nothings for better timing. They both have around 2 seconds duration. This way the pad will keep falling over and over like a narcoleptic. By the way, you should never use this on your active player character or you will get wasted and go to the hospital. I'm sure many of you are interested in tasks that are useful for combat and action, so that's what we're talking about next. With these two, you can let a character aim somewhere, either a fixed position or an entity. The latter has the advantage that if an entity is moving, the barrel will always point towards the threat, like a villain walking by. A silly thing that happens here though is that they sometimes start doing those small tippy taps, which just looks too comical in my opinion. Alternatively, you could apply an aiming animation here, but it could also look okay if you slow down the footage a little in Rockstar editor. Equivalently, there are two shooting tasks with the same features.
I'm out!
The characters will reload automatically if a clip is emptied, which is very neat. When it comes to filming big shootouts, I advise against using shoot at entity and selecting an enemy character. This would mean that basically many of your characters would die instantly. Instead, I like using shoot at position and placing the position to shoot at roughly where the enemy is standing. They hit the targets like absolute aimbots, so you don't have to worry about accidental kills in the menu map. Have a look at my shootout map from Red Roses here. All characters are firing somewhere, but nobody is killing each other. This gives you a lot of time to film all individuals, while you can do the actual killing by turning yourself invisible and shooting the enemies one by one. Another way to make the characters shoot is to use seek cover at position. Not only will the actor get into cover, but also pop out and fire a few rounds or reload in cover. So when setting the duration here, you have to add some more time for the character to do some shooting after going behind the cover. Otherwise he will keep on searching and reposition every few seconds.
What the fuck?
Unfortunately, at least in my game, removing allow peeking will not stop the actor from shooting. So if you want to show some characters hiding in cover, it is best to do this with the task play animation. The small task set active weapon is neat because it lets your character switch weapons within a sequence. I want to pick the sniper rifle and then switch to a throwable weapon. After each task you should add some delay with a nothing task. I don't think that the weapon switch is something you should show on camera because the objects just vanish and it looks too much like a video game. Still, it's great for chaining together action scenes. Throw projectile is a simple task that will make actors throw any type of throwable weapon if one is held, which is what happens in this example.
Jesus!
This means I can add the task at the end and select a target for the throw. Let's add another 2-second buffer here and add a shoot at position task for the sniper rifle. Let me just rearrange those tasks into the right order here.
How the fuck are you alive?
This is roughly what a scene like this could look like. Patrol and range is useful for actors guarding a perimeter, because they will walk around randomly. The only problem I see here is that the radius moves along with the character instead of staying in a static place. This means that ultimately your actor will drift away from the actual area you want him to stay in. That is why it is best to decrease the radius a little bit, depending on the perimeter that is to be covered. If you want your guards to walk a certain path, it is still better to use follow route, because they won't stand still every few seconds. In comparison though, Wander freely will make your character walk around like regular pedestrians, which isn't really useful in combat scenarios, but great for crowding a street even if you have deactivated traffic and pedestrians with Simple Trainer. This will allow for better continuity, because if you have to do multiple takes for a scene, there will be the same characters you have chosen in the background, instead of just random pets that GTA spawns. There are also some tasks that are specific to pets if they are using vehicles. For example, when you save a menu map with the intention to have a character sitting in a car, it will look like this upon reloading the map. To circumvent this, you can save the menu map with the character standing outside of the car and then use the task Warp into Vehicle. You can even determine a specific seat here. It is a useful off-screen technique that will teleport actors into any vehicle. This method also works for menning or womaning vehicle weapons. Unfortunately, the tasks shoot at position and shoot at entity do not work for these guns. So if you were to film a gunner firing, you'd have to control the weapon yourself. Let's make the actor exit the vehicle with this task here. But
oh no!
This task has no duration setting.
Anyway,
we still have the very useful nothing task we can add. The on-screen equivalent to warping into the car is called Enter Vehicle. So let's put this at the end and pick another seed. Fortunately, this has an option for the duration, which is useful because you can place your character farther away from the car or include longer animations like jumping on the back of the pickup here. I'm gonna remove all of the excess stuff to show you the next type of task called Cruise. No, not the kind you are thinking of.
Yeah, baby.
No, not that one either. Cruise is the vehicle version of the task Wander Freely. This just means that the actor will drive around town randomly, giving you a chance to do some fun drive-by shootings. For endless fun, you can set the duration to 999 and change the maximum speed and different driving styles, which is very powerful for cinematics. Of course, if the car is not powerful enough, it won't necessarily be able to reach the maximum speed. By the way, if you end a task sequence while in a car, the pets will warp out automatically. That's why it is always smart to have a task to make them warp in at the beginning. If you need more control over where the car should be going, you can use Drive to Position, which has the same variables up here, but also an option to set a waypoint like we've seen earlier on foot. The actor will drive along regular roads, kinda like when you set a waypoint for yourself on the minimap with the GPS. In my opinion, this works best for shorter distances instead of complex routes. Chaining multiple of these drive to position tasks together to make multiple waypoints is not advisable because there is no way you can set the perfect duration for reaching each waypoint. If it's too long, the car will just stand there and wait at the first destination until the timer runs out and then continue to the next task. Drive to position is useful for car chase scenes, when you want to be the driver of the following car. While the AI actor drives along the route according to your settings, you can overtake or be the aggressor.
Look the fuck out!
And speaking of car chases, Drive and Follow Entity is also perfect for this, just the other way around. I've shown this in my tutorials before and it ain't rocket science. You can adjust these parameters again here, which will generally be set to a high speed and avoid traffic a lot. If you're going for more of a street race type of scene, it is better to leave the minimum distance as is, because if you set the minimum distance to 0, it will allow the following car to ram the leading vehicle that you are driving. And street racers wouldn't do that to their babies.
Love you, baby.
Finally, make sure to select your car as the target here. If you don't have any other crazy tasks in the sequence, you can even leave the duration set to 10 seconds because it will loop indefinitely anyway. As you can see in this live demonstration, the follower will react to your maneuvers very swiftly and even follow you off-road. This will make for great cinematics if you give it a couple of takes along a pre-planned track. Of course, you can rinse and repeat these steps for multiple actors and cars to create big races, but don't count on the AI to be perfect opponents here. Pro tip: just like on actual Hollywood movie sets, you don't need to be driving all that fast in the game to create an exciting chase scene. Just look at this comparison I created of the original gameplay and the camera angles that came out of it. By adding a little bit of shake and using quick cuts, you can really create impressive moments. In case you were wondering if these vehicle-specific tasks also work for planes and helicopters, I've got good news and bad news for you. Yes, it does work, but only to an extent. Firstly, the cruise task does not work when airborne. Forget about it. Drive to position, however, is kinda useful. Of course, this time the waypoint must be set high up in the air, so use the spooner mode to quickly go wherever you need. By holding control, it will be a lot faster. As soon as you start the sequence, the plane will take off. In a weird way. And after reaching the waypoint, yeah. This happens if the duration is set too long, because just like in the car, the actor wants to wait at the destination for the timer to run out. So then I thought it might work if I set the timer to 1 second to have the task loop a lot faster, you know? But yeah. Same result. If you want to do the same thing for helicopters, it works a little better. However, you can forget about letting a heli hover low over the ground, because even if you set the destination to ground level or below the ground or even way up high, there seems to be a set altitude above the ground at which the heli wants to hover. So let me be honest, if you're planning on doing scenes involving aircraft, do it yourself. You have much more control over everything and it will look better on screen. The task drive and follow will absolutely not work, so if you want to film dogfights with planes, this is actually one of the rare scenarios where it's better to just go into a quiet online server and record with a friend in the other plane. I gotta admit though, the task land plane worked better than I expected during testing. I didn't think the AI could pull that off. But when you set the timer too long, there might be bugs. Also, do not try this task with a helicopter or it might crash your game. Fuck! To wrap this chapter up, here are some of the less useful tasks, at least in my opinion. Writhe and die. Because then your actor actually dies and you have to respawn them or revive them with Menyoo's pet revival gun. That is annoying. Closest appropriate action? No clue what this does and it gives you no control over what's happening, which is the exact opposite of what you want in a machinima. And Trevor sure as hell doesn't know what is appropriate. Fight pad just sucks because in my experience, the actor will just flee like a little bitch, even if they have a gun. Same goes for fight enemies if eligible and provoked. If anyone knows a way of making these tasks work, let me know. Speak to pad. How do I say this?
Sounds good, doesn't work.
The task Perform Scenario Action allows you to play specific animations that include props, which is a very quick way to create ambient characters without much hassle. However, Menyoo somehow has trouble with the props when you restart the task sequence, meaning that the guitar or the hammer may not respawn anymore, or even some scenarios not loading at all. All in all, this is not very reliable, so I'd advise against it. And if you still want to use this on your set, you can do it via Simple Trainer, because this one loads the props properly all the time. Alright, I think I've covered all of the tasks you need to know about. Let's get a little more practical. Best practices. Now let me share some useful strategies with you when working with task sequences. The ability to save them within a menu map is incredibly useful, but by default, all tasks will start upon loading a map. This can lead to total chaos if you have other things that you need to do or prepare before you start the tasks manually. For example, in Lucid Encounter, I loaded a map with dynamic objects, but without the explosion from the sticky bombs, the characters just ran through the rubble. To avoid this, you open Menyoo's Object Spooner, go to Manage Saved Files and pick your map. Here you can remove this tick mark. If you wanna start your tasks all at once at a later time, you go to Select Multiple Entities and select them all. Then you can start and stop all tasks. Next up, there is a situation where you have to apply the same task sequence to multiple characters, which can be super annoying depending on how many actors and tasks you need. A good example for this is a group of soldiers marching in perfect synchronicity. Let me just apply a regular play animation walking task here. And also our beautiful little teleport snap combo. And then I'll save this map again. Just Alt-Tab out of the game now, no restart needed. There is an easy method that once again involves editing the XML file of your map in the folder Menu Stuff Spooner. In there you will find all the code that controls your actors. Searching for the term task sequence or sequence brings me straight to the one and only character I've applied the sequence to. Copying this portion of the code over to the other characters saves you all the hassle of doing this in the game. Using the search feature with Ctrl F can help finding characters or objects in bigger chunks of code. When you're done, save the XML file and go back into the game. Of course, you'll have to delete all entities and reload the map now. The only values you have to adjust here now are the coordinates in teleport to position. Otherwise, all of the characters will teleport back to the same position of the first soldier and collide with each other. So let's adjust this real quick and of course save the map again before we do anything funny. Starting all task sequences for this map will make the soldiers march together. Since play animation is going to be one of your most used tasks, you gotta stay efficient. In my opinion, it is easier to use an outside character to search and find animations. For me, it's usually Franklin. Once you've found a suitable anim, save it as a favorite. That way, in the task menu when you scroll all the way down, it will be the lowermost entry, allowing for quicker access than by using the search feature. Be warned though, your list of favorite animes might get bloated as hell, as you can see with mine. However, you could go to the Menu Stuff folder and save a favorite list in a new folder for every video project after finishing it. That will make it easier to remember if you need an animation again. By the way, you don't need to worry if you accidentally interrupt a character's task by bumping into them.
Oh, crap!
The timer will keep running in the background. In this example, it's the 10 seconds from the play animation task, and then the sequence will start over again. If you, however, have set a duration of 999 seconds, it's best not to wait it out, naturally. For this example, I want Franklin to ragdoll at the moment he leans back, but the animation goes on for way too long at 10 seconds here. It even starts another playthrough. The duration value can be very useful if you find an animation that is too long. You can just set a shorter duration to interrupt the animation, and now the timing is perfect. This method could also be used to skip to another animation faster, which might or might not look good on camera, but interrupting can still be useful for better timing off screen, for instance when the camera pans away for a short moment. Let's stay with this example sequence. Another way to get the timing of a task sequence right is what I call live scripting. This is especially useful for tasks that are laid out to loop with teleport to position and snap to rotation. These two tasks have to be prepared thoroughly as always. Then, instead of adding each task one by one and guessing the values you need to adjust, it can be helpful to add all or a few tasks to lay out the scene and activate the sequence first. Then, while it is already playing live, you can fine-tune every detail like durations and positions to your liking. Of course, if you have long timings like a 22-second nothing task, you can just stop and restart the sequence so you don't have to wait as long. Try not only changing the durations, but also shifting the order of the tasks with the arrow keys. It might change the outcome more than you think. I could go on forever just adding tasks to this character, which right now is nonsensical but a lot of fun. When finding the perfect starting position for a character in a sequence, it can be hard to find the exact spot by changing the coordinates of the teleport task, like with this example from earlier. Sometimes it might be easier to just determine a position, and instead of moving the character, you can always position an object differently. So if an actor is supposed to go into cover and you're having a hard time placing him, just try placing the cover differently, which might be easier. Those were some of my findings from the past year. Now let's move on to common problems you will encounter when working with task sequences and how to fix them. Bugs and problems. If you expected task sequences to work flawlessly all the time, you may uninstall GTA 5 now and never even think about making Machinima again. Nothing in this game comes for free, so be prepared to encounter bugs. I want to use this chapter to talk about the most common ones you will find. Admittedly, it is hard to show off these bugs because I can't voluntarily trigger them for this footage, but those are the most common ones I encountered. The first one is the 0 seconds bug that sets the duration of a task to 0 no matter how often you try to change it back. Generally, this tends to happen with play animation tasks in my experience. This is a very annoying bug because it happens very randomly. Luckily, there is a workaround for this. First, activate keep task running on the animation task. After this, you add a nothing task and change its duration to the desired value. The animation should now play like normal. If that fails, my best advice is to try and delete all the tasks for that particular character and reapply them. Or even to clone the character and delete the old version. It's worth a shot. Another problem is that Menyoo PC doesn't save custom multiplayer models correctly if you created them with the tool Skin Control. Look at the comparison here. On the left you can see the character as loaded with Skin Control, and on the right is the one Menyoo loads with the map. While this issue is not directly related to task sequences, it affects your scene when you reload a Menyoo map. You couldn't use this character because it looks wonky. But if you change the model with Skin Control or any other mod, the entity is removed from your menu database, including the task sequence you programmed. This means that you would have to redo the task sequence for every multiplayer model after reloading a saved menu map. Even if you were to create the character in skin control and save it as a menu outfit, the same result happens. Keep that in mind while planning your scene. Therefore, I recommend not using more than 1 or 2 multiplayer characters at the same time in any map or scene if you create them in skin control. Alternatively, you could create your characters from scratch in Menyoo right away, and then it should be possible to save them correctly, making you not lose your task sequences. Other bugs that may happen from time to time are inconsistencies in the movement of characters. So sometimes they will not turn all the way to face another entity, or they will not perfectly snap to the rotation you've set, resulting in the actor not arriving perfectly at the planned object. Usually, you just have to wait for the next loop and it should work itself out. Good job, RPG Lester! Other times the characters may not perfectly follow the route you've set and bump into objects. In this case, try to overcompensate by placing the markers further out to any suitable direction to avoid these idiots colliding with solid objects. The problem is then you have to redo all the waypoints again here, so sometimes it might be easier to just once again move the object instead of changing the task sequence. One more problem that you may encounter is that if you have a lot of characters and objects with task sequences saved in your map, they will not sync perfectly when you start them all at once. And sometimes pads will even forget to do some tasks. This is due to the fact that just like any other program, the code in the XML file runs from top to bottom, adding a normal delay that adds up the more tasks are being calculated. This is a problem that I couldn't find a solution for. As seen here from my Machinima Red Roses, the pads are supposed to get into cover and then shoot, but somehow it just won't work out. The only workaround was to start the task sequences for a maximum of 4 or 5 characters at once. If you encounter any other problems with task sequences, feel free to share them. Even better, if you found your own workaround, let me and all the other creators know how to fix that specific problem. The fucking outro. I hope you all learned a lot today about how to control multiple characters without asking the friends that you don't have to body act with their GTA Online characters, which would look boring anyway. As you've seen, it's quite the tedious process to set up big sequences, but no other method gives you that much control over your actors and lets you save and reload your progress that easily. And now you know why it takes weeks and months to make a quality short movie with GTA 5. You have to realize that it takes some practice to fully grasp the logic of how task sequences work. I hope this tutorial gave you a starting point for that. I can't say I'm an expert myself, even though I've been experimenting quite intensely for over a year now. But once you get the hang of it, programming these tasks will become second nature to you and you will use task sequences in all of your menu maps. And that's about it for this tutorial. Once again, if you have any questions, leave a comment and I will try my best to help you out. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. whanowa over.